On their wedding night, just hours after the last guest had left, Ada walked into their room in her white silk nightgown. She found Mama Veronica seated at the foot of their bed. Mama Veronica looked her up and down, smiled calmly, and said, "I just want to see how you handle my son." Ada laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. Ada met David at a business conference in Abuja. He was polished, patient, and everything she'd prayed for in a husband. Tall, soft-spoken, and always respectful, he opened doors, pulled out chairs, and listened when she spoke. It wasn't long before Ada fell hard. He told her about his late father and how he'd been raised solely by his mother, Mama Veronica, a strong woman who had sacrificed everything for him. Ada admired the story. She hadn't met Mama Veronica yet, but David's devotion to her warmed her heart. When he proposed, her family rejoiced. Ada thought she'd hit the jackpot. But at their wedding, Mama Veronica barely smiled. She didn't hug Ada. Instead, she pulled her son aside and whispered, "You'll always be my baby. No woman will change that." After the last wedding guest left, the house finally grew quiet. The music had faded, the laughter had stopped, and the air was thick with the scent of sweat, perfume, jollof rice. She took a long, hot shower, hoping to wash off the day's exhaustion. Her white silk gown clung softly to her damp skin as she stepped into the dim bedroom. Then she froze. Mama Veronica was sitting at the edge of their bed. Not in the living room. Not in her own quarters. No. Right there. On their bed. Her hands were folded on her lap. Her feet didn't touch the ground. And her eyes, calm, still, and far too alert, stared directly at Ada. "I just want to see how you handle him," she said in a low, steady voice, like a teacher observing a slow student. Ada forced a laugh, wrapping her arms around herself. "Mama, I thought you'd gone to bed." No reply. Just that same stillness. Then David walked in, already loosening his tie. He didn't stop in his tracks. Didn't even blink. "Mama, I thought you were going to your room," he said casually, as though this was normal. As though it was okay for a grown man's mother to be sitting on the marital bed he was supposed to share with his new wife. "I will," she said. She stood, walked over to him, and kissed his forehead with unsettling tenderness. Then she leaned close and whispered something into his ear. Ada couldn't hear it. He nodded. Just once. Then Mama Veronica turned to Ada, gave a small, unreadable smile, and walked out without saying another word. The door clicked shut. David didn't say much as he pulled off his shirt and lay down. He barely looked at Ada. She sat beside him, confused, waiting. When she touched his arm gently, he sighed. "I'm tired," he said. Just that. No kiss. No warmth. He turned his back and fell asleep almost instantly, as if her presence beside him was just furniture. Ada lay back on her pillow, wide awake. The silk gown that once made her feel like a bride now felt like a costume. Something was off. She glanced at the door. It was shut, but it didn't feel shut. She pulled the duvet up to her chin. Her heart beat loudly in the silence. The second night of Ada's marriage began much like the first, quiet, uneasy, and unnervingly cold. Ada had spent the evening pretending. Pretending to be comfortable. Pretending not to notice the glances Mama Veronica kept throwing her way across the living room. By 10 p.m., David yawned and stretched, announcing it was time to rest. Ada followed him into the bedroom, secretly hoping they'd finally have a moment to themselves, just the two of them, as husband and wife. She had barely begun to undress when there was a single knock at the door. Before either of them could respond, the door creaked open. Mama Veronica stepped in like she lived there. Like the room belonged to her. Like David still belonged to her. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't wait for an invitation. She walked in with the quiet confidence of a queen inspecting her throne. Then, she sat down at the edge of their bed. But this time, she spoke. He likes his back rubbed before anything else, she said calmly, as if sharing a recipe. I always used to do it when he was little. Ada blinked. Her throat tightened. She wasn't sure what to say. Mama, Ada said slowly, I'm his wife. Her voice was soft, but the weight behind it was still. Mama Veronica turned her head slightly. Exactly. Then she gave a slow smile. Which is why I expect you to do it the way he likes it. Like I taught him. Ada stood frozen, gown clutched at her chest. She looked at David, hoping, praying he would say something. That he would speak up. That he would defend her. But David just stood there, looking down at the floor like a guilty teenager. He scratched the back of his neck and gave a half shrug. I mean, it does help me relax, he muttered. Ada's chest tightened. Relax. Was she here to be a wife, or a replacement mother? I'm not here to continue your mother's bedtime routine, she whispered under her breath. But Mama Veronica heard. She stood up slowly. Her movement was deliberate, her chin high. She walked past Ada and paused at the door. Then, without turning back, she said, don't make him uncomfortable in his own house. A good wife listens. She walked out. David climbed into bed without another word. He turned his back to Ada like he had the night before and sighed. No conversation. No affection. No explanation. Ada sat on the edge of the bed, trembling. She got up quietly and walked into the bathroom, locking the door behind her. Inside, she turned on the tap just to drown the silence. She didn't want to cry, but the tears came anyway. Fat, hot tears rolled down her cheeks as she sat on the closed toilet seat, arms wrapped around herself. This wasn't marriage. This was a performance. And she was the only one who didn't know her role. She stayed there for almost an hour. And in that moment, she realized something terrifying. She had entered a marriage where she might never be alone with her husband. One night, Ada had trouble sleeping and woke up at 2:43 a.m. She turned and screamed. In the corner of the room, Mama Veronica was seated in the dark, watching them sleep. Jesus! One night, Ada had trouble sleeping and woke up at 2:43 a.m. She turned and screamed. In the corner of the room, Mama Veronica was seated in the dark, watching them sleep. Jesus! Ada yelled. What the hell are you doing? Mama didn't flinch. I just wanted to make sure you weren't hurting my son. He doesn't like pressure on his chest. You did that yesterday. Ada couldn't breathe. Her voice shook. You watched us. David turned slowly and mumbled. She just cares, Ada. Don't shout at her. That night, Ada locked the bathroom door and sat on the floor until morning. By the fifth night, Ada knew peace was no longer hers. Earlier that evening, Mama Veronica had cooked dinner herself. She insisted Ada rest. You're still new. Let me take care of my son the way I used to, she'd said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Ada sat at the edge of the couch, pretending to scroll through her phone, but watching. When it was time for bed, Ada hoped the night would pass differently. That maybe David would finally see how strange things had become. That maybe, just maybe, his mother would not follow them upstairs again. She brushed her teeth in silence, put on the same silk nightgown, and climbed into bed, determined to reclaim her marriage. David came in, smiling softly. He leaned over and kissed her forehead. Her heart skipped. Maybe he was finally seeing her. He got in beside her, and for the first time since the wedding, reached for her waist. Ada closed her eyes, letting the warmth of his touch melt away days of coldness. Yes. This was it. Finally. Then. The door creaked open. Ada's eyes flew wide. Footsteps. Slow. And then the voice. Soft. Too calm. Don't mind me. Just passing through. Mama Veronica stepped in like she always did. David turned, barely surprised. Mama, he started. But she held up her hand. I just want to be sure she's doing it right, she said. Her voice was gentle. Deadly. Ada couldn't breathe. She looked at David. Begged him with her eyes. Say something. Do something. Make this stop. But David only chuckled nervously. She's just being dramatic. Don't mind her. He turned back to Ada, brushing his lips against her collarbone. Ada froze. Mama Veronica's eyes didn't blink. Didn't move. Just stayed locked on them. Like a judge. Like a teacher reviewing an assignment. Ada felt the heat drain from her body. Her hands shook. Her heart pounded in her throat. Still, David touched her. Still, he kissed her. And still, Mama Veronica watched. Ada whispered, I can't. David stopped. But Mama spoke instead. You're too sensitive. Do your duty. That's what a wife does. Ada stood up and pulled the sheets around her. Tears welled in her eyes. This is not normal, she whispered. David looked at her like she was the one acting strange. You're overreacting, he muttered. Ada shook her head slowly. No. She wasn't crazy. This was madness. She told her parents everything. They begged her to endure. Marriage is not sweet at the beginning, her mother said. It was a hot Wednesday afternoon when Ada and David were finally alone. Mama Veronica had gone to the market, or so they thought. Inside their bedroom, David reached for Ada again. With caution and hunger, they kissed, truly kissed, for the first time since the wedding. This time, no watchers, just them. Ada's body trembled, but not out of fear. Maybe this was their moment. Maybe they could begin again. But outside the window, two eyes stared in. A familiar figure stood behind the slightly parted curtain, her breath fogging the glass. And in the process of doing the thing, a sharp voice pierced through the window. Go harder, son. Ada jerked away, pulling the sheet to her chest. David sat up. Outside the window, Mama Veronica stood, her arms folded, unashamed, smiling. Not even pretending to hide. Ada let out a strangled cry. She was watching us. David, she was watching us. He scrambled to the window and pulled the curtains shut, but it was too late. The moment was ruined. Again. Ada got up, shaking with fury and shame. She went straight to the bathroom and slammed the bathroom door and locked it. David sat there, stunned. Outside the window, Mama Veronica laughed like she'd won. When Ada came out, she was dressed. I'm leaving, she said calmly. David opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I begged you to set boundaries. You didn't. She walked past him, suitcase in hand. This time, she didn't just leave the room. She left the house. After Ada left, David sat on the edge of the bed. Mama Veronica came in with a tray of food like nothing happened. But David didn't eat. The next few days, the house was quiet. Too quiet. The scent of Ada's body lotion still lingered, but her laughter was gone. Her presence was gone. That's when it hit him. He had lost her. And for what? A mother who wouldn't let go. He called her. No answer. He texted. Apologized. Pleaded. Nothing. Eventually, Ada responded with one line. Until you become your own man, don't call me again. 3 weeks later. David stood outside Ada's office, holding a single white rose, her favorite. He looked thinner, eyes tired. When she stepped out and saw him, Her face was unreadable. Mama Veronica is back in the village, he said before she could speak. I told her she can't live with us again. I chose you. Silence. Then, quietly, he added, I'm ready to be a husband, not a son. Ada didn't answer right away. She just looked at the man in front of her, not the boy who used to sit silently beside his mother, but a man who had finally drawn a line. She exhaled. I'll pack my things, she said softly. The next day, she returned. This time, the house felt different. In the evenings, they cooked together. They ate on the floor. They laughed. One night, as they lay on the couch, Ada whispered, I hope she doesn't come back. David kissed her hand. She won't. Not this time. And for the first time, Ada believed him. Not because he said it, but because Mama Veronica's chair had finally been removed from the foot of their bed. For good. Back in the village, Mama Veronica sat alone. At first, she was angry, calling David ungrateful. But over time, the silence humbled her. She missed her son. One day, she heard Ada had given birth. Quietly, she began knitting baby clothes, hoping, just maybe, David would come visit. She had finally learned, love doesn't mean control.